I never imagined that the person who brought me into this world would be the one to publicly humiliate me in a way that cut deeper than any knife. It was just 2 weeks after I'd finally mustered the courage to move out of my childhood home in Seattle, Washington, packing up my life in the dead of night to escape the suffocating grip of my mother's endless demands. I'd left a simple note on the kitchen table that read, "Mom, I need to start my own life. I love you, but this isn't working." I thought that would be the end of it. A quiet break from years of being her emotional and financial crutch. Years of sacrifice that had drained every ounce of my energy and left me feeling like a shell of who I could have been. But then, late one evening as I sat in my cramped new studio apartment in Capitol Hill, scrolling through X on my phone to unwind after a long day of design work, her post popped up like a slap in the face. The notification pinged, and there it was, glowing on my screen with all its casual cruelty. Finally free from my freeloading daughter she should have left years ago. Haha, empty nest victory at last. Mom life wins. The words stared back at me, tagged to all our mutual friends, family members, and even some of my old colleagues from my first job. My heart shattered right there on the spot, the pieces scattering like broken glass across the floor of my chest. Tears streamed down my face as I read the replies, each one landing like another punch to my gut. Laughing emojis, supportive comments like, "Good riddance," and "You deserve this freedom, Karen," from people who'd known me my whole life, who'd watched me grow up, who'd told me I was such a good daughter. That mocking haha was the final betrayal, the one that ignited a fire in me I'd never felt before. It wasn't just anger, it was a pure, crystallized determination. I was done being the good daughter, done being the silent victim, done letting her control the narrative of our broken relationship. It was time for my bold reply, but more than that, it was time for a revenge that would peel back every layer of her lies and make her face the truth she'd hidden for so long. My name is Emily Harper, and I've always been the fixer in my family, the one who held things together when everything else was falling apart, the one who sacrificed her own dreams to keep everyone else afloat. Growing up in our modest two-bedroom house on the outskirts of Seattle, with the constant rain pattering against the windows like a melancholy soundtrack to our lives, life was a complicated mix of cozy memories and quiet struggles that I didn't fully understand until I was much older. Dad died in a car accident when I was just 10 years old, and I still remember the police officers at our door at 2 a.m., their faces grave and apologetic. I remember my mother's scream that night, a sound so primal and broken that it still haunts my dreams sometimes. That tragedy left Mom, Karen, to raise me and my younger sister, Lisa, alone. She was 52 now, working part-time as a receptionist at a dental office downtown, answering phones and scheduling appointments for $16 an hour. But her real job, her true vocation, seemed to be playing the perpetual victim, expertly crafting narratives where she was always the one who'd been wronged, always the one who'd sacrificed more than anyone else. "Emily, you're my rock," she'd say, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness that always made my stomach twist into knots. "I don't know what I'd do without you. You're all I have left in this world." I'd believed it for years, internalized it so deeply that it became part of my identity. I worked my graphic design job at a small marketing firm for $45,000 a year, which wasn't much in Seattle's expensive market, but I made it work. Except I didn't really make it work for myself, I made it work for her. Half my paycheck, exactly $1,875 every single month, went straight to her account. Essentials, she called them, and I never questioned it. Overdue utilities that somehow were always one day from being shut off. That new outfit she needed for a job interview that never seemed to materialize. A car repair that was supposedly critical, but the car somehow never seemed any better. I was so deep in the fog of manipulation that I couldn't see how abnormal this was, how a 28-year-old woman shouldn't be supporting her able-bodied mother. Lisa, my younger sister, was 24 and had gotten out earlier than me. She'd earned a full scholarship to a nursing program in Portland and took it without looking back, putting 175 miles between herself and our mother's gravitational pull. She was the smart one, the one who'd seen through the manipulation years before I did. Mom's toxic, she told me countless times during late-night phone calls. Don't let her drag you down. You need to leave before she destroys you completely. But I was too empathetic, too resilient in my misguided loyalty, too convinced that I could save us all if I just tried hard enough. I thought I could fix our broken family, thought that if I gave enough, sacrificed enough, worked hard enough, maybe she'd finally be happy and we could be the family I remembered from before Dad died. Little did I know, my strategic side, the one that planned every marketing campaign at work to perfection, the one that could see patterns and solve complex problems, would soon turn toward unraveling the web of deceit she'd spun around me for years. The cracks in our relationship had been widening for months, maybe years if I was being truly honest with myself. It started so small, almost invisible, the kind of thing you tell yourself is just normal mother-daughter friction. Constant criticisms that chipped away at my self-esteem piece by piece. I'd come home exhausted from a 10-hour day at the office, my eyes burning from staring at design mock-ups and my back aching from hunching over my desk, and she'd snap at me the moment I walked through the door. "You're always so selfish, Emily. Can't you help with dinner, or are you too important now with your fancy job?" The guilt trips about Dad were even worse, cutting deeper because they touched the rawest part of my grief. She'd say things like, "You've abandoned me just like your father did," as if his death in a car accident was somehow a choice he'd made, as if I could ever replace him or fill the void he'd left. She'd weaponize my grief, use my love for my father against me, and I'd fall for it every single time. But the real gut punch, the moment that should have woken me up but somehow didn't, came last spring when I got a letter from a debt collector about a $4,000 loan I supposedly took out for a car repair. I stared at that letter in confusion, reading it 3 times because I hadn't owned a car in 2 years. I took the bus to work every day to save money. Panicking, my hands shaking as I navigated the website, I pulled my credit report online and saw the nightmare unfold in front of me in black and white. Multiple accounts opened in my name, 7 different ones, each one a separate betrayal, all tied to Mom's side hustles and schemes. One for those multi-level marketing candles that went bust after 3 months, $1,800 in debt. Another for online gambling sites she'd sworn were just for fun when I'd caught her on them, $20,200 in charges. A third for some cryptocurrency investment scheme I'd never heard of. Another $1,500 gone. She'd used my social security number as casually as borrowing a cup of sugar. Forged my signature on digital forms with practiced ease. Stolen my identity, my credit, my financial future. When I confronted her that night, my heart pounding and my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and disbelief, we sat at our worn Formica kitchen table with takeout Chinese growing cold between us, the smell of sweet and sour chicken turning my stomach. She didn't even deny it at first. There was no shock, no apology, no shame in her eyes. "It was temporary, honey. You'll get it back eventually. Family helps family. That's what we do. Your father would have understood." Her eyes were cold when she said it, calculating, like she was a predator sizing up prey, like she was measuring how much more she could squeeze from me before I completely broke under the weight of it all. I paid off $2,000 right then from my savings, money I'd been carefully setting aside for maybe one day, buying my own place, or taking a real vacation. I froze the rest of the accounts with shaking hands, filed fraud reports with the credit bureaus, and tried to protect what was left of my financial life. But the trust? It was gone, evaporated like morning fog over Puget Sound, never to return. That's when I started secretly planning my escape, operating like a spy in my own home, saving every penny I could hide. Looking at apartment listings late at night while she slept in the next room, my laptop screen dimmed so the light wouldn't show under my door. Calculating exactly how much I'd need for first month's rent, last month's rent, and security deposit. Freedom had a price tag, $3,600, and I was willing to pay it, willing to sacrifice anything to get out. Moving out was harder than I thought it would be, not emotionally. I'd been emotionally checked out for months, but logistically, like executing a military operation. I chose a Friday when Mom was at work, her regular 9 to 5 receptionist shift that gave me exactly 8 hours to erase myself from that house. Lisa drove up from Portland in a U-Haul, arriving at 9:47 a.m. exactly, and she was my accomplice, my support system, my reminder that I wasn't crazy for doing this. "This is the right move, Em," she said, hugging me tight in the driveway while I tried not to cry. "You've given enough, more than enough. It's time to save yourself before there's nothing left to save." We loaded boxes of clothes, years of Target clearance finds mixed with a few nice pieces I'd splurged on during better times. My design laptop, my lifeline to independence, and my career. A few cherished photos of Dad, the ones where he's laughing at a barbecue or pushing me on a swing, before the accident stole him from us forever. My hand shook as I wrote that final note. Such simple words for such a complicated goodbye. "Mom, I need to start my own life. I love you, but this isn't working." I taped it to the refrigerator at 4:30 p.m., right next to her shopping list and doctor's appointment reminder. We drove off at 4:47, and I didn't look back. Couldn't let myself look back because if I saw that house in the rearview mirror, I might have lost my nerve entirely. My new place in Capitol Hill was everything that house wasn't. A sanctuary, a fresh start. Small, yes, just 450 square feet of studio apartment, but it was mine in a way nothing had ever been mine before. Fresh paint on the walls in a soft gray I'd picked myself after spending an hour at the hardware store with sample cards. A tiny balcony overlooking the bustling street below, where I could drink my morning coffee and watch the city wake up without anyone judging me or demanding something from me. The first week was liberation in its purest, most exhilarating form. Mornings where I could make coffee without hearing her complaints about the smell being too strong, or how I made it wrong, or how I was wasting money on good beans when Folgers was perfectly fine for normal people. I even started freelancing on the side, taking on small logo design jobs and branding projects that added $500 to my monthly income, money that was actually mine to keep, to spend on myself, to save for my future. My boss Sarah at work noticed the change in me immediately. "Emily, you're on fire lately," she said during our weekly check-in meeting. "That rebrand for the cafe? Absolute perfection. You've really come into your own these past few weeks." I felt like I was finally breathing, like I'd been underwater for a decade, slowly drowning, and finally broke the surface and gulped in fresh air. For exactly 13 days, I felt free, truly, genuinely free for the first time since I was 10 years old. I remember the exact moment that freedom shattered. 9:47 p.m. on a Wednesday evening, curled up on my thrift store couch with a mug of chamomile tea, trying to shake off a long day of client revisions and creative meetings. X notifications started pinging on my phone. Once, twice, 5 times, 15 times. My heart started to race even before I looked, some instinct telling me something was wrong. And there it was, glowing on my screen with all its calculated cruelty. Her profile picture, the one from a family barbecue years ago where she's smiling like we were the perfect family, next to those words that would change everything. "Finally free from my freeloading daughter. She should have left years ago. Haha, empty nest victory at last. Shuts, mom life wins." I read it 3 times, each time hoping I'd misunderstood, hoping it said something different. Freeloading daughter, me. The one who'd covered her rent for 3 years straight, 36 months of $1,975 checks. The one who'd paid her electric bill 47 times over the years. Who'd bought her groceries when her paycheck didn't stretch. Who'd canceled my own vacation plans to help her with some crisis that always, mysteriously, required exactly the amount I'd saved. But that that casual, mocking felt like she was laughing at every tear I'd shed for her, every sacrifice I'd made, every time I'd chosen her needs over my own dreams. I scrolled the thread with trembling fingers, my vision blurring with tears, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. Aunt Judy, Mom's sister, had replied, "About time, Karen. Enjoy your freedom." Old neighbors were chiming in, people who'd waved at me growing up, who'd watched me shovel their driveways for extra cash when I was a teenager, who'd always said I was such a good daughter, so responsible. No one messaged me privately to check if I was okay. Not one single person. Not Aunt Judy who'd watched me grow up. Not the neighbors who'd known our family for 20 years. Nobody. The betrayal burned hot in my chest, mixing with a deep, aching sadness for the mom I wished she could be. The one who'd bake chocolate chip cookies on rainy days when I was little, who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd held me for hours when I cried after Dad died, promising me everything would be okay. Not the one who'd weaponized social media against her own flesh and blood for sympathy and attention. But anger, white-hot and clarifying, won out that night. I sat there for 28 minutes, staring at the reply box on my phone, typing messages and then deleting them. My first attempt was pure emotion. How dare you? After everything I've done for you, you're a liar and a thief, and I hope you rot alone. But I deleted it. Too reactive, too easy to dismiss as a daughter having a tantrum. My second attempt was more specific. Everyone should know the truth about why I really left. Ask her about the credit cards in my name. Ask her about the $4,000 in debt I'm paying off for her mistakes. But I deleted that too. Too much information too soon. I needed to create intrigue, build tension, not blow all my ammunition in one shot. My third attempt felt right, felt strategic. Mom, if freedom feels this good, why drag me down in your post? The truth about why I left might surprise everyone. Family secrets. I hovered over the post button for what felt like an eternity, my finger shaking. This would change everything. Once I hit send, there was no taking it back, no pretending this was all fine. At 10:15 p.m., I pressed it. Within 2 minutes, 3 likes appeared. 5 minutes later, 23. An hour later, 200 people had engaged with it. People I hadn't spoken to in years were suddenly paying attention, suddenly seeing that maybe there was more to this story than my mother's victim narrative. It was bold, a direct shot across her bow, a declaration of war. But I knew it was just the opening move in something much bigger, something that would require patience and strategy and perfect execution. Revenge wasn't about screaming back at her. That's what she'd expect, what she could use against me. Look how unstable my daughter is. Look how she attacks her poor mother online. No. Real revenge was about strategy, about patience, about exposing the rot she'd hidden beneath that victim mask for so long. Sleep evaded me that night completely. I paced the apartment, the city lights flickering through the blinds like judging eyes, replaying every instance of her manipulation in my mind like a horror movie, like the time she borrowed $1,200 from my emergency fund for a friend's surgery that turned out to be a weekend getaway to the coast with her book club. Or how she'd badmouth Lisa to me constantly, calling her ungrateful and selfish for not sending money home from her nursing school stipend, all while pocketing the $200 Lisa sent for her birthday as rent help. Or the Christmas 2 years ago when she'd guilt-tripped me into canceling plans with friends because she'd be all alone on Christmas, just like every year since your father left me. And then spent the entire day on her phone scrolling Facebook and ignoring me while I cooked an entire holiday meal for 2. Inner conflict raged through me that night, keeping me awake until dawn. Was I overreacting? Was I being cruel? She was alone now, in that house full of memories. Maybe she was lashing out from hurt, from feeling abandoned. Maybe I was the bad daughter she said I was. But no. This wasn't hurt. This was calculated cruelty. This was her trying to control the narrative before I could tell my side of the story. By morning, my reply had 200 likes, and the comments from strangers were pouring in. Stand your ground, girl. And, this sounds like textbook narcissistic abuse. Look up gray rock method. And, I went through the same thing with my father. You're not alone. Stay strong. It gave me a spark, a reminder that I wasn't crazy, that what I'd experienced was real and valid and wrong. I called Lisa first thing at 7:42 a.m., knowing she'd just be getting off her night shift at the hospital. Wait, oh my God, I just saw it, the tweet, your reply. What the hell is happening? Her voice went from groggy to fully alert in seconds. She posted that I was freeloading, I said, my voice breaking. After everything, after I paid her bills for 3 years, after the credit card fraud, after everything I've sacrificed for her. Lisa went quiet for a moment and I heard her car turn signal. I'm pulling over, hold on. We talked for 45 minutes, her sitting in a grocery store parking lot in Portland, me pacing my tiny apartment in Seattle. And she shared something I didn't know, something that made everything click into place. She tried the same thing with me last year. tried to use my student loan information to open a credit card in my name. I caught it early because I obsessively check my credit after what happened to you. I froze everything and cut her off cold turkey. I never told you because I knew you were still in deep with her, and I didn't want to add to your burden." "You mean I'm not the only one?" I asked, something like relief flooding through me. "You were never the only one, Em. She's a parasite, and parasites don't stop feeding until the host dies or escapes. You escaped. Now you need to burn the bridges so she can't follow you back." That conversation solidified everything, crystallized my resolve. Lisa vowed to support me, to be my witness, to stand with me no matter what came next. We promised each other, no more enabling, no more guilt, no more pretending this was normal mother-daughter stuff that every family dealt with. The war had begun, and I was going to win it with truth, with documentation, with undeniable evidence. The days that followed were a whirlwind of quiet, strategic planning. If Mom wanted to play the victim publicly, I'd dismantle her story piece by piece with facts she couldn't dispute. But I needed proof, undeniable, documented, legally solid proof. I dove into my finances with a level of scrutiny I'd never applied before, treating it like a forensic investigation. I hired an affordable credit monitoring service for $99 a month, worth every single penny for what they uncovered. What they found chilled me to my core, made me realize just how deep her betrayal went. Not just the $4,000 I knew about. There was another $2,500 in hidden charges from 2 years back, charges I'd never seen because she'd somehow gotten the statements rerouted to her email address instead of mine. I still don't know how she managed that technically. Online shopping sprees disguised as gifts for you, Emily. Luxury candles I'd never received, designer purses that never appeared, expensive makeup brands I'd never worn. She'd even maxed out a card in my name for casino apps. $175 here, $350 there, $500 in one desperate night of virtual slot machines. The total damage, $8,750 in fraudulent debt. Nearly $9,000 of identity theft, of stolen future, of betrayed trust. Rage bubbled inside me like a volcano ready to erupt, hot and consuming and demanding release. But I channeled it strategically, funneled it into action instead of reaction. I started a digital folder on my laptop labeled simply Mom Evidence, clinical, organized, professional. I took screenshots of the tweet and all its replies, each one time-stamped and saved. Bank statements going back 3 years, with every transfer to her account highlighted in yellow. The visual impact was staggering when you saw them all together. Emails where she'd begged for money with increasingly dramatic sob stories, each one more manipulative than the last. "Emily, honey, they're going to shut off my power tomorrow. I'll have to sit in the dark and cold. Please, just $200. I'll pay you back next month, I promise." She never paid me back. Not once in 3 years. But my most valuable piece of evidence was an audio clip from my phone, recorded during a fight 6 months ago. I'd started recording our arguments after Lisa suggested it during one of our late-night phone calls. "Document everything," she'd said. "You think you'll remember, but trauma makes memory unreliable. You'll need it later." On that recording, you could hear my mother's voice, venomous and cruel in a way she'd never be in public. "You'll be nothing without me, Emily. Nothing. No one wants a whiner like you. You're lucky I even put up with your ungratefulness. You owe me your life. I could have given you up when your father died, left you in foster care, but I sacrificed everything for you." It was evidence of abuse, pure and simple. Proof that she was the aggressor, not the victim she pretended to be online. At work, I confided in Sarah during our weekly lunch at the corner deli, both of us with turkey sandwiches and iced tea. She was more than my boss. Over the past year, she'd become something like a friend, someone who actually cared about me as a person. "Emily, you seem really distracted lately," she said gently. "Is everything okay? You can talk to me, you know." I took a deep breath. Family drama. My mom. She posted something about me online that wasn't true. And I'm finding out she did some things with my credit that are pretty serious. Identity theft, fraud. Sarah's face changed, hardened with recognition. "Oh, hun, I've been there. My ex-husband's mother tried to ruin my credit during our divorce, made up debts, forged documents, opened accounts in my name. It was a nightmare that took years to untangle. She leaned forward, her voice intense. Listen to me. Get legal advice. Don't let this fester and grow. It only gets worse if you ignore it, like a cancer. I felt tears prick my eyes. Legal advice? I don't know if I can afford a lawyer. I'm barely rebuilding my savings after paying off her debts. Sarah pulled out her phone. There are free clinics, especially for women dealing with family financial abuse. I'll text you some resources right now. Promise me you'll call them. That evening, I Googled the resources she'd sent, scrolling through options until I landed on one that felt right. Northwest Justice Project, free legal help for women. They had an opening 3 days later, Thursday at 2 p.m. My appointment with Rachel, the attorney, changed everything about how I saw this situation. She was in her late 30s, sharp eyes behind designer glasses, wearing a professional blazer that somehow made me feel more confident just being in her presence. Her office had a stack of case files on her desk that looked depressingly similar to mine. Other daughters, other mothers, other families torn apart by money and manipulation. Okay, Rachel said, clicking her pen and opening a fresh legal pad. Walk me through this from the very beginning. Don't leave anything out, even if it seems small or embarrassing. I need the complete picture. I laid it all out, my voice surprisingly steady. The tweet that started this public war. The fraud, every account, every dollar, every forged signature. The 3 years of financial drain, the constant manipulation, the emotional abuse. The recordings where you could hear her real voice, not the sweet victim voice she used in public. Rachel flipped through my folder slowly, nodding occasionally, her expression growing more serious with each page, making notes in small, precise handwriting. This is textbook financial abuse and identity theft, Emily, she finally said, looking up at me with sympathetic but determined eyes. In Washington state, identity theft is a Class C felony if the amount exceeds $5,000. You're at $8,550, so that threshold is clearly met. My stomach dropped. Felony? I don't want to send my mother to prison. I just want her to stop, to leave me alone, to fix what she's done and let me live my life. Rachel nodded understanding. I get that, and that's actually an option. We can start with a cease and desist letter. Demand she deletes the defamatory posts, stops all contact with you, and creates a concrete repayment plan for the debts. Give her a chance to make this right. And if she refuses? I asked, already knowing the answer. If she refuses or retaliates, which narcissistic personalities often do when confronted, then we file a police report and potentially pursue criminal charges. The threat of criminal consequences gives us significant leverage for restitution. We can also explore small claims court for additional damages, emotional distress, credit repair costs, the time and suffering you've endured. Rachel sketched out a strategy on her legal pad, her handwriting small and efficient. How much would all this cost? I asked, my practical side asserting itself. Filing fees for small claims in Washington are $290 for amounts up to $10,000. The cease and desist letter I can draft pro bono through this clinic, that's what we're here for. If we need to escalate to full litigation, we'll reassess your options and resources. I left that office with a plan sketched on paper and a sense of empowerment I hadn't felt in years. Step 1. Gather more proof, specifically full credit reports from all 3 bureaus showing every fraudulent account. Step 2. Notify credit bureaus formally with fraud affidavits to protect my future credit. Step 3. Send cease and desist letter via certified mail so there's legal proof of delivery. Step 4. If needed, file police report and pursue small claims court for full restitution and damages. Under $300 for filing fees. Achievable even on my tight budget. It felt empowering, like I was finally fighting back with brains instead of emotions, with law instead of just rage and hurt feelings. But doubt crept in that night as I sat alone in my apartment, the weight of what I was doing settling over me like a heavy blanket. Was revenge worth losing her forever? Was I destroying the last connection to my childhood, to my father's memory, to the idea of family I'd always held on to? She was my mother, after all. Flawed, yes, abusive, definitely. But she was still the person who'd raised me, who'd held me through nightmares after Dad died, who'd taught me how to bake those chocolate chip cookies I loved, who'd braided my hair before school every morning. I pulled out my journal, a cheap notebook from Target, and wrote with tears dropping onto the pages. She broke us first. She chose money over me. She chose lies over truth. She chose her own comfort over my future. This isn't revenge. This is justice. This is boundaries. This is saying, I matter too. I matter just as much as she does. Mom didn't stay quiet. Of course she didn't. 2 days after my reply, she posted again, escalating her victim narrative. Some kids think they're too good for their parents. They forget who raised them, who sacrificed everything for them, who gave up their own dreams so they could have opportunities. Tough love time. When you're older, you'll understand what I did for you. Real talk. Just parenting is hard. It garnered more sympathy from people who didn't know the real story. Strangers commenting, "Stay strong, mama. Kids these days have no respect for their parents. And you're better off without that negativity in your life. Focus on yourself." But then something shocking happened that made my blood run cold. She linked her Venmo account in a follow-up post with a photo of herself looking sad and vulnerable. For single moms struggling alone after their kids leave, every bit helps rebuild a life. Donations started trickling in from strangers who believed her performance. $20 here, $50 there. One person sent $150 with the note, "You deserve so much better, keep your head up." But Rachel's voice echoed in my head, calm and strategic. Let her build her narrative. The higher the platform, the harder the fall when the truth comes out. Patience is your weapon here. Let her feel confident. Let her think she's winning. It makes the exposure more devastating. We sat on my balcony as the sun set over the Seattle skyline, painting everything gold and pink, and unpacked everything that had happened. "Remember Grandma's necklace?" Lisa asked suddenly, her voice soft but steady. "The silver locket Dad gave her before he died? She used to wear it every single day." I nodded, a memory surfacing. Yeah, she wore it constantly. Then one day it was just gone. She said she'd lost it, that it must have fallen off somewhere. Lisa's face was grim. "She didn't lose it, Em. She pawned it. Got $300 to cover a bounced check. This was literally the week after you got your promotion at work, when you took her out to that nice restaurant to celebrate and paid for everything." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. She pawned Dad's necklace? That was all we had left of him, of their marriage, of the good times before everything fell apart. My voice broke. Lisa nodded, her own eyes shining with tears. She called it accidental when I confronted her about it last year, said she'd meant to get it back from the pawn shop but never had the money. I found the receipt in her desk when I was home for Thanksgiving. I didn't tell you because you were already drowning in her problems, and I didn't want to add another weight to your shoulders. We sat in silence for a moment, both crying quietly, mourning not just the necklace, but what it represented, the final proof that nothing was sacred to her, that she'd sacrifice anything and anyone for her immediate needs. Then we laughed, bitterly and harshly, because crying felt like giving her more power over our emotions. "We need a strategy," Lisa said, shifting into practical mode. "Document everything, every post, every comment, every dollar she collects through that Venmo scam. When the time comes, and it's coming soon, you go public with facts, not feelings. Facts she can't dispute, facts that turn her supporters into your witnesses." I looked at my sister, this strong, smart woman who'd escaped years before I did. "You really think this is going to work? That people will believe me over her?" Lisa squeezed my hand tight. "Em, I've seen you plan marketing campaigns from scratch. I've seen you rebuild a company's entire brand identity in 3 weeks for that restaurant client. You're brilliant at strategy and execution. Apply that same energy here. Treat this like the project it is, a campaign to expose the truth and reclaim your narrative. You're not just some hurt daughter lashing out. You're a credible witness with evidence and a clear, documented case." By week 3, my initial reply had snowballed beyond anything I could have imagined. 1,000 retweets, 3,400 likes. It had broken out of my immediate circle and was being shared by domestic abuse advocacy accounts, financial fraud awareness pages, and women's support networks I'd never heard of. My direct messages were flooded with messages from women, mostly women, though some men too, sharing their own stories of family financial abuse. My mom did the same thing with Facebook posts. One woman wrote, "Called me ungrateful after I finally escaped her house. You're brave for fighting back so publicly." Another, "I'm currently saving money to leave my manipulative father. Your story gives me hope that it's possible, that I'm not crazy for wanting out." It built a community of survivors, but it also built pressure and expectations. The supportive messages came with demands. "You need to tell the full story. Don't hold back. Expose her completely. She deserves it. Don't let her get away with this. Too many parents abuse their kids financially and face no consequences." The weight of all these expectations pressed down on me. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was representing hundreds, maybe thousands of people who'd been in similar situations. People who needed to see that standing up to family abuse was possible. Mom escalated 2 days later with a vague sub-tweet that made my stomach turn. "Betrayed by your own blood. Story of my life. Gave everything, received nothing but pain." The comments flooded in with support for her. People who had no idea what was really happening. Inner conflict hit its peak that night when I dreamed of Dad for the first time in months. In the dream, we were at our old house before he died, and he was grilling burgers in the backyard while I played on the swing set. His gentle voice said, "Protect your heart, Em, but don't let anger poison you." But then morning came and I saw her latest post, a selfie taken in our old empty house, her face arranged in calculated sadness, caption reading, "Alone because of her, the house feels so empty now." More lies. She'd pushed me away with years of abuse and manipulation, and now she was using my absence for sympathy and donations. My Venmo monitoring showed she'd collected $847 so far from strangers. $847 earned by playing the victim of the daughter she'd financially abused. The audacity of it reignited my determination. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth, about justice, about making sure she couldn't do this to anyone else. Rachel's cease and desist letter arrived at Mom's house via certified mail on a Tuesday afternoon. I tracked it obsessively online, watching it go from the post office to out for delivery to finally, at 2:17 p.m., signed for by Karen Harper. The letter was professionally worded but absolutely clear. Delete all defamatory posts about Emily Harper within 48 hours. Cease all contact, including indirect contact through social media, and acknowledge the $8,750 in fraudulent debts with a proposed repayment plan within 30 days. Failure to comply would result in a police report for identity theft and fraud, followed by civil litigation for damages. Mom's response came faster than I expected. At 6:34 p.m. that same day, my phone rang with her number. I let it go to voicemail, my hands shaking as I watched it ring and ring. When the notification popped up, I listened to the message on speaker, so Lisa, who was visiting again, could hear it too. Mom's voice trembled with what sounded like fear under the bluster. "You think a letter from some lawyer scares me, Emily? You think you can threaten your own mother? You're dead to me. Dead to me. After everything I've done, this is how you repay me? With lawyers and threats? You're ungrateful, spiteful, and cruel. I hope you can live with yourself." Her voice cracked at the end, and the message cut off abruptly. Lisa and I looked at each other in silence for a moment. Then I saved the voicemail, adding it to my evidence folder. "She's scared," Lisa observed. "That's not anger, that's panic. She knows she's caught." I nodded, feeling a strange mixture of triumph and sadness. I immediately blocked Mom's number on my phone, blocked her on every social media platform I could think of, even blocked her email address. No more direct contact. From now on, everything would go through Rachel if it needed to go anywhere at all. I was focusing on myself now, on rebuilding. A new freelance client reached out that week for a book cover design, $800 earned for one project. My savings account hit $2,500 for the first time since I'd moved out. Small victories, but they felt huge. The real shock came 2 weeks later when I was casually scrolling through Facebook during lunch break. "Abandoned single mom needs help after daughter steals my peace. Help me rebuild my life." The description was a masterpiece of manipulation, painting herself as a devoted mother who'd sacrificed everything, only to be abandoned and publicly humiliated by her ungrateful daughter. Photos of our old home looking pitifully staged. She'd even removed some furniture to make it look emptier, more desolate. The goal was $10,000. She'd already raised $2,347 from strangers who believed her performance. Some children don't deserve their parents, sending love and $50. My daughter did the same thing to me. We mothers need to stick together. I stared at my computer screen in my office, my heart pounding so hard I thought my coworkers could hear it. This wasn't just online drama anymore. This was fraud on a public scale, collecting money under false pretenses. I immediately took screenshots of everything: the page, the donations, the comments, the photos she'd manipulated to look more sympathetic. Consulting with Rachel that afternoon via phone, we discussed our options. "This is actually good for your case," Rachel said, and I could hear her typing notes. "It demonstrates a pattern of financial manipulation and fraud. We can report it anonymously to GoFundMe's fraud department. They take false campaigns very seriously. But Emily, I think it's also time for you to tell your side publicly. Not in anger, but in clear, documented truth. You've been silent long enough, and she's using that silence to build a false narrative. It's time for personal closure and public accountability." Her words resonated deeply. I'd been gathering evidence for weeks, building my case quietly, but staying silent was allowing her to control the story. That night, I started writing. Not a tweet this time, but something longer, more permanent. A Medium post titled, "Breaking Free from Family Betrayal, My Truth After the Tweet." I wrote for 3 hours straight, words pouring out of me like a dam had burst. I detailed the fraud, but gently at first. No names, just patterns of abuse that others might recognize in their own lives. I talked about the emotional manipulation, the financial control, the constant guilt trips. I discussed what it felt like to see that first tweet, to be called a freeloader after years of literally paying her bills. I wrote about learning that family isn't always blood, that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away from toxicity. When I finished, it was 11:47 p.m. I read it through 3 times, edited for clarity and emotional impact, made sure every fact was accurate and every claim was defensible. Then I shared it with Sarah via email, asking for her thoughts. Her response came 20 minutes later. "This is powerful, Emily. This is healing. This is going to help so many people. Publish it." The post went live on Thursday morning at 9 a.m. I linked it in a follow-up tweet. "Mom's victory post about me leaving? Here's the full story of why I left. Read it and decide for yourself who the real victim is here." I hit post, closed my laptop, and went to work trying not to think about it. But by lunch, my phone was exploding. The views counter on Medium was spinning. 500, 1,000, 2,500, 5,000. Comments poured in faster than I could read them. "This explains everything. I'm so sorry you went through this. Your mother is a textbook narcissist. Please get therapy if you haven't already. I'm sharing this with my domestic violence support group. Thank you for your courage." Mom retaliated within hours with a Facebook Live video, and someone sent me the link even though I'd blocked her. I watched it with Lisa on speakerphone, both of us analyzing it like a court case. I worked 2 jobs, went without so she could have nice things, and this is how she repays me, with lies and lawyers? But her story had cracks in it that I noticed immediately. Hesitant pauses when asked specific questions by commenters, avoiding any direct response to the money questions. "Did you use her credit?" someone asked in the comments. She ignored it. "What about the GoFundMe and Venmo?" another person asked. She kept talking about sacrifice and victimhood without addressing the actual accusations. Then something unexpected happened that turned the tide completely. Aunt Judy, Mom's own sister, broke her silence in the comments of that live video. "Karen, I've seen Emily's credit reports. I know what you did. Stop this before you make it worse for yourself. Tell the truth for once in your life." I gasped when I saw it. Aunt Judy was the family matriarch, the one everyone respected and listened to. The live video comments exploded with people now questioning Mom's narrative. "Why is your own sister calling you out? If your family is against you, maybe the problem is you. Mom ended the live stream abruptly, her face pale and shocked. The alliance I'd quietly built over coffee with Aunt Judy 3 weeks earlier was paying off. I'd shown her the evidence during a secret meeting at a neutral cafe, and she'd seen the truth in black and white. She'd chosen truth over loyalty, and it was a devastating blow to Mom's credibility. Suspense mounted over the next few days as Rachel officially filed the police report with the Seattle Police Department. 2 detectives from the Financial Crimes Unit contacted Mom within 48 hours, requesting an interview. I knew this because Rachel kept me updated on every step. Mom lawyered up immediately with a public defender from the county, which told me she didn't have money for a private attorney, despite all her GoFundMe and Venmo donations. My evidence mounted as I continued to gather everything. Affidavits from the bank showing the fraudulent accounts and forged signatures, the audio recordings of her verbal abuse, credit reports with forensic breakdowns of every fraudulent charge, and even Lisa's sworn statement about her own experience with Mom's attempted fraud. Waiting for the investigation to proceed was torture. Nights of what-ifs plagued me. What if the police didn't believe me? What if she somehow turned this around? What if I'd destroyed my family for nothing? But mixed with the fear was regret for the childhood glimpses of love amid the chaos. Baking cookies together on rainy Saturdays, her reading to me at bedtime, the way she'd held me when I was scared of thunderstorms. Those memories felt like ghosts now, haunting what could have been if she'd chosen differently. Lisa crashed at my place during a particularly bad storm one night, and we huddled together on my couch with hot cocoa, just like when we were kids hiding from Mom's mood swings. "You're ending the cycle, Em," Lisa said softly, her arm around my shoulders. "For both of us. If you have kids someday, they won't grow up in this toxicity. That's what this is really about, breaking generational patterns of abuse." Her words helped more than she knew. A week later, Rachel called with an update that changed everything. The detective called. They have enough evidence to file charges. 3 counts of identity theft, 1 count of fraud. "But Emily, your mother's attorney reached out to negotiate. She wants to avoid criminal prosecution." My heart raced. What does that mean? Rachel's voice was calm and professional. "It means she's willing to accept responsibility, agree to a restitution plan, and accept a restraining order in exchange for charges being reduced or dropped. It's up to you whether to accept that or push forward with prosecution." I thought about it for 3 days, talking it through with Lisa, with my therapist, even with Sarah over lunch. What did I really want? Did I want my mother in jail? Or did I want her out of my life and repaying what she'd stolen? In the end, I chose restitution and boundaries over revenge. The settlement was finalized in court 3 weeks later. $8,750 in restitution to be paid over 36 months at $243 per month. Mandatory financial counseling for Mom. A formal restraining order prohibiting any contact within 500 feet or through any medium including social media. And she had to delete all defamatory posts and shut down the GoFundMe. GoFundMe had already suspended her campaign and refunded all donors after their fraud investigation, which gave me grim satisfaction. The Bold Replies peak moment came when I decided to do my own live session on X Spaces. From mocked to empowered, my full story. I promoted it for 3 days in advance, and when I went live on a Sunday evening, 300 listeners joined within the first 5 minutes. I sat on my couch with a glass of water and my notes, and I narrated everything from the beginning. My voice cracked on the emotional beats, talking about Dad's death, about the first time I realized Mom was using my credit, about seeing that tweet. "That tweet broke my heart," I said, letting the emotion show. "But it also woke me up. It forced me to see what I'd been denying for years, that this relationship was destroying me, and I deserved better." About 20 minutes into the session, I saw a username join that made my blood freeze. Karen H. 2024. It was her. She'd found the space and joined to listen. Then her audio cut in, interrupting me. "This is slander. Everything she's saying is lies. I'm her mother and I have rights." The chat exploded with responses, but they weren't supportive of her. "If it's lies, why did you settle in court? Why did your own sister confirm it?" "Actions speak louder than words, Karen." I took a deep breath and responded calmly. Mom, if you want to tell your side, you can do it on your own platform. This is my story, my truth, my healing. Goodbye. I removed her from the space. She tried to rejoin twice more, but I blocked her each time. The chat rallied around me. We believe you, Emily. You're so strong. Thank you for sharing your truth. The consequences rippled outward like waves from a stone dropped in still water. Mom's social circle, the one she'd carefully cultivated with her victim narrative, began to shrink. Aunt Judy went no contact permanently, telling other family members what had really happened. Old friends started unfollowing Mom on social media as the truth spread. Her church community, where she'd been playing the abandoned mother for sympathy and casseroles, distanced themselves after several members reached out to me privately, and I shared the court documents. The court order required her to find additional work to make the restitution payments, so she picked up weekend shifts at a grocery store stocking shelves. Her comfortable life of sympathy and donations was over, replaced with accountability and consequences. I saw her only once after the court hearing, about 2 months later. I was getting coffee at my favorite cafe in Capitol Hill, the one where I'd become friends with Jake the barista who made perfect lattes. As I was leaving with my drink, I saw her sitting on a bench in the small park across the street. She looked smaller somehow. Older, her hair grayer than I remembered. Our eyes met, and for a moment neither of us moved. Then, against my better judgment, I walked over. We sat on opposite ends of the bench, 2 feet of space between us that felt like a canyon. Why did you do it, Mom? I asked, my voice quiet. Why the post? You could have just let me go quietly. She was silent for a long moment, staring at her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with tears. I was scared. Terrified, actually. You left, and suddenly I was alone in that house with all those memories and all that silence. I thought if I could make you the bad guy, if I could get people on my side, it wouldn't hurt so much. And the money, I know it was wrong, Emily. I knew it even when I was doing it. But I kept thinking just this once, and then just one more time, and it became a pattern I couldn't break. Empathy tugged at my heart, that old familiar feeling of wanting to fix her pain, to make everything okay. But I'd learned too much, grown too much, to fall back into that trap. You need to heal on your own, Mom. I can't do it for you. I spent years trying to save you, to be enough for you, and it almost destroyed me. I've reclaimed my life now. I'm finally putting myself first, and I'm not apologizing for that anymore. She nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. I know I've lost you, both of you. She looked up at me then. Is there any chance? I cut her off gently but firmly. No, the restraining order stands. The boundaries stand. You need to focus on your counseling, on repaying the debt, on becoming someone who doesn't hurt the people who love her. Maybe someday, years from now, we can have a conversation, but not now, not until you've done the real work. I stood up to leave, and she grabbed my hand briefly. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry for all of it. I looked down at her, this woman who'd given me life and then made that life so difficult. I believe you're sorry you got caught, Mom. I hope one day you'll be sorry for what you actually did. I pulled my hand away gently and walked back to my apartment, crying the whole way but feeling lighter somehow. That conversation gave me closure I didn't know I needed. She was no longer the monster in my story or the victim in hers. She was just a broken person who'd made terrible choices and now had to live with the consequences. 6 months after that tweet, my life looks completely different, transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined. I got promoted to senior designer at work with a $55,000 salary, a $10,000 raise that feels like validation of all my hard work. Sarah advocated for me, telling upper management I was indispensable to the company. I'm dating Jake, the sweet barista from my coffee shop, who knows my order by heart and makes me laugh every single day. He knows about my past, about Mom, about the whole online battle, and he thinks I'm brave. Lisa and I are planning a sister's trip to Hawaii next month, our first real vacation together as adults, and I'm paying for it with freelance money I've earned entirely on my own. That tweet, that horrible mocking tweet that shattered me on a random Wednesday evening, became the catalyst for the justice I desperately needed. It forced me into action, into standing up for myself, into finally saying, enough. Revenge, I learned, isn't about hurting someone back. It's about patient truth-telling, about gathering evidence, about using systems of justice to hold people accountable. It's about reclaiming your narrative from someone who tried to control it. In the end, this whole experience set us both free. It freed her to finally face the mirrors she'd been avoiding her whole life, to confront who she really was beneath the victim mask. And it freed me to soar, to finally spread wings I didn't know I had, to build a life based on my own choices rather than her needs. The online community that formed around my story continues to thrive. I get messages every week from people who read my Medium post or heard my X space and found the courage to leave their own toxic situations. Some ask for advice, which I give carefully, always emphasizing the importance of evidence and legal counsel. Others just want to share their stories, to feel seen and heard by someone who understands. I've thought about starting a support group or blog specifically for adult children of financial abuse, using my experience to help others navigate similar situations. Maybe that's my next project, my next campaign. Looking back now, I can see how that single tweet was actually a gift wrapped in cruelty. It ripped off the band-aid I'd been carefully maintaining for years, exposed the wound beneath, and forced me to actually treat it instead of just covering it up and pretending I was fine. If Mom had let me leave quietly, I might have carried guilt and confusion for years, wondering if I'd been the bad daughter she claimed I was. Instead, her public attack pushed me to document everything, to see the pattern clearly, to understand that I was the victim, not the villain. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives become the turning points that lead us to our best selves. This was mine. This was my transformation from doormat to warrior, from victim to survivor, from silence to vocal, and I wouldn't change a single thing about how it played out, because every step led me here, to freedom, to peace, to a life that's finally, genuinely mine.